Welcome back, guys. Today we will be looking at two scared you sleep paralysis stories, and I hope these stories frighten you. Mr. Midnight is still not back. I'm sure he'll be back soon, but I want to pass on his message to you. Always remember, the darkness always follows. I'm not posting this because I want someone to psychoanalyze me. I've got someone for that. And unless I'm giving you a $50 insurance copay, I'm not inclined to listen to your opinion on the subject. There's no amount of empathy or armchair insight that's going to improve my situation. So please, stuff it. Each night, I am faced with a terrible decision. I can choose to sleep, but that comes with a whole host of problems. I will share it in a few paragraphs. I can choose to stay awake, but that comes with a whole host of problems. I'll explain that also. The human body can only stay awake for so long before it succumbs to the more debilitating effects of sleep deprivation. These include, but are not limited to, chronic fatigue, dizziness, fainting, and micro seizures. There's also the matter of psychosis and hallucination. But in my case, it's not like it could get much worse. Each night I am faced with that terrible decision, and I choose to stay awake. Believe me when I say that I'd love to lay down right now and sleep until September, but that isn't an option. As is, I only sleep when my body refuses to obey my will. I crash hard, and that's where I am reminded of why I choose to stay awake. The sleep itself is fine. I fall asleep, and for a few blissful hours, I experience nothing. No dreams, no tossing or turning. Nothing. Well, that isn't entirely true. See, I have a bit of a problem in that department. If I fall asleep, it is guaranteed I'll have an episode of sleep paralysis. I wake to find myself completely immobile. I can neither move nor scream. As I am forced to lay there and view my ceiling, I hear her footsteps. The woman who haunts these episodes moves towards me slowly and uses my body as a canvas for tableaux drawn with fingernails and teeth. The bee cuts me to shreds. I feel each agonizing cut. I feel the wet smack of a bloody fist hitting my face as I am powerless to defend myself. I experience this sometimes for what feels like an hour. Then, without warning or hesitation, I find myself awake and in my bed. My room is empty and I'm able to get up and move around. If that were it, I think I'd be fine. Plenty of people have nightmares like this. Most people don't wake up with blood soaking through their shirt and flesh wounds on their chest, legs, and genitals. Trust me, you don't want to show up to an emergency room with a third-degree burn in the shape of a cigarette cherry on your genitals. If you should be so unfortunate as to find yourself in that situation, it would probably be unwise to tell the doctor that the psychotic bee in your sleep paralysis dream was torturing you, and that's why you are covered in cuts and burns. It isn't a mistake I've made twice. In fact, I have become quite adept at patching myself up so as to avoid rising medical costs and awkward conversations with the emergency room staff. My wife left me. She said she didn't want to live with a man that had no desire to care for himself. She's of the opinion that I'm harming myself, and has made no secret about the fact that she worries that I'll die before the divorce is finalized. She might stop by the house once in a blue moon to retrieve something from the basement, but she's out the door before I can even talk to her. I am tempted to change the locks. It's impossible to stay awake for days at a time without chemical assistance. Energy drinks come with a crash within a few hours. Before the onset of these episodes, I'd kill one a few hours before I wanted to fall asleep for just that reason. Caffeine is great for squeezing in a few extra hours, but I've got a prescription for something a bit more potent. I talked my psychiatrist into giving me modafinil. At base therapeutic dose, it promotes wakefulness in narcoleptics. At the dose I regularly use, it can keep me awake for almost a week at a time. It also does a decent job of getting me through some of the fatigue. The downside is I only get 60 pills a month, and I burn through them in a little under 10 days. It's not exactly something that has street value, so if I run out, I have to take my chances with other stimulants that are a bit easier to find. Mind you, I'm not some filthy drug addict. I'm not running around putting rails of meth up my nose or anything. But given the choice between physical torture and aging prematurely from long to prolonged wakefulness, it isn't even a decision. One is clearly better than the other. So what if the bags under my eyes had transformed into luggage? My wounds get to heal before I crash and a new round begins. I set up cameras in my bedroom. I shelled out a pretty penny to make sure they could record in night vision mode and everything. Despite this, I have no evidence that anything happens when I am sleeping, beyond the occasional murmuring in my sleep. Believe me, if I could prove that the bee was real, I'd probably have killed her by now, and we'd be having a completely different discussion. Sometimes I'll watch the footage and try to figure out when the dream is happening. This usually lasts for an hour at most before I am up on my feet and trying to avoid resting long enough to get comfortable. Even with the drugs, if I still for too long, I get drowsy if I've been up for a few days. As of right now, I've been awake for 4 days. It's getting hard to stay awake this long. I nod off for a half a second and jolt awake as my mind flashes to the staples that held my scrotum together after that bee came half an inch shy of making me a yunch. Even as I type this, I see the cigarette burn scars on the back of my hand, and that is enough to push me forward. The last episode was by far the worst. I had fallen asleep on my side. Naturally, I woke in that state. I think the bee liked that I could see her coming. In the dim light of the room, she moved across the carpet with her long red hair covering her face. I could barely make out her features, but I could tell that she was grinning as she pulled the straight razor from her side and sliced it across my cheek. My eyes darted around as she whispered, "Keep looking at me, and I'll pluck out your eyeball." She brought the edge of the razor dangerously close to my left eye as I desperately tried to escape from that terrible dream. Then, as quickly as she had sliced before, the razor found its way to my right forearm. She licked my blood off the blade and whispered, "Yep, tastes like bee." Something about her whisper seemed so familiar, but still I was distracted by the searing pain as she lit yet another cigarette and used my navel as her ashtray. At first I was relieved when she walked away. However, to my horror, she returned with my prescription for modafinil and said, "These pesky pills are coming between us, John. I'll be sure to flush them on my way out." Her raspy whisper almost seemed chipper as she pocketed the pills and went back to running the edge of her blade along the contours of my skin, just heavy enough to on the touch to draw blood. This came to an end as I predictably passed out and woke to the sun shining brightly through my bedroom window. My pills were gone, and I had cuts on my face and arms. I had fresh burns on my abdomen. That was 4 days ago, and I'm at my wit's end. I finally broke down and bought some Adderall from a college kid in a desperate attempt to stay awake. It's about as effective as the modafinil, but comes with a bit more agitation and tardive dyskinesia. It's not going to be much good though. It's 4 in the morning and I've been awake long enough that I know a crash is imminent. I've already scoured the medicine cabinets for anything resembling a pill. Nothing. I even went down into the basement and searched my wife's belongings for anything I could use to keep myself occupied or sufficiently effed up. With the exception of a few hypodermic needles and vial of something called Nimbex, the most I could find was some of that caffeinated candy she likes so much. Dr. Snodgrass said if I showed up to another appointment when physical injuries, he was going to send me to an institution. At this point, I'd almost welcome it. As much as I hate those places and welcome the opportunity for someone far more qualified than myself to see what I have to deal with. I'm going to find out sooner or later anyway. I've nodded off 3 times while writing this. It's only a matter of time. The good news is that I found a pack of Marlboro in her things. It isn't like I'm that worried about my health anymore, and frankly, it's a welcome change of pace to smoke the cigarette instead of being burnt by it. The scent of the smoke triggers another flash of memory with each plume that billows from the cherry. I'll be seeing that evil bee soon. I know it. I know this terrible woman that haunts my dreams is nearby. I can almost smell her in the air. She's there. She always knows. She's watching, and there's no escape. I'm gonna go ahead and post this now. Don't expect any updates. Dr. Snodgrass was very clear about what would happen if I was injured again, and my appointment is at noon tomorrow. I've given him the recordings before. I'll give them to him again. Maybe they'll believe me when I'm strapped to a bed, and it still happens. Good night. Here's to hoping I don't wake up. I don't want to live like this anymore. My sleep paralysis isn't sleep paralysis. I was only 8 when I had my first sleep paralysis experience. I can remember clearly as well. I remember as if it was any other night. I did my usual routine before bed, take a shower, get in my PJs, brush my teeth. You know the drill. I went to bed and fell asleep very quickly. I remember thinking about how easy math homework was that night and how good dinner was, and I slowly dozed off to sleep. Then I woke up. I'm pretty sure it was around 1 o'clock in the morning. I tried getting up, which I couldn't. So I just laid there, not really scared, more or less curious. So about 2 minutes pass by, and then my walk-in closet opens, and something peeks out of it. I remember it having the head of a deer. Just the flesh was rotting off, and the bone was showing. Flies were flying around its head, slowly eating it. And it was very tall, hitting the top of my ceiling with its antlers. Its arms were rotting away with claw-type hands. The arms were down to the lower part of its thighs, which were rotting away too. The legs were rotting away aside from the lower legs, which were mostly bone, but still had rotting flesh. The eyes were a glowing red, but were flickering on and off. The thing slowly stumbled towards me like a drunk, and when it finally got to the foot of my bed, it put its claw on my leg and slowly scraped my leg up to my stomach, which caused me to scream, but I couldn't. I was terrified as the thing slowly scraped my leg, as its eyes kept flickering on and off, staring into my soul. Then it stopped and allowed me to look at the damage. I saw a large gash in my stomach, which made me want to puke. Then it looked into my eyes. This time the thing's eyes didn't flicker at all, and it put one of its fingers to its bony mouth for 10 whole seconds. Then it dropped its arm and slowly stumbled its way back into my closet. But I didn't care. I cared about my open stomach. And then I got up, once it allowed me to, but that's when I noticed my gash was gone and replaced with some scraps. So I went back to bed, still in throbbing pain. But I fell asleep somehow. When I woke up, I was still in pain. Not as much pain, but still pain. It was a type of pain where it didn't hurt, but it was more irritating. The scratches were still there, big red claw scratches. I never told my parents. I still don't know why. I went about my daily routine. Get up, take out the trash, go in the backyard, pick up any dog poop, clean my room, make my bed, set the table, and eat breakfast. I remember I was very excited that morning. I was going to my friend's house that afternoon, and I couldn't wait. I paid no mind to my sleep paralysis last night. I had totally forgotten about it. As I wasted time in the living room watching some mindless cartoon, I could have sworn I saw the same thing from my sleep paralysis in the corner of my eye. I jolted my head to the right, looking at the window where I saw it, and I just saw the rotting claw on its hand, with dried blood covering. Just leave my line of sight. I just stared at what I just saw. I tried to rationalize it with my 8-year-old mind. But how do you rationalize something like that? Especially as an 8-year-old. I got up and my mother greeted me. My friend's mom behind her and my friend behind her as well. Once I saw him, my face turned into a smile. We did the usual greetings between friends and I got my shoes and we left my house. We went to my friend's house, which was huge, at least for an 8-year-old. The house was a classic middle-class suburban house, but it had a huge unfenced backyard. My friend and I did many things. We played some games on his Wii and his Game Boy. At one point he suggested we go play hide and seek in the woods. I thought it was a bad idea, since I had the fear of getting lost. He looked at me and sighed, and he gave the face which showed disappointment, but agreement at the same time. We continued to play until I had to be picked up by my father. I turned to him and said, "Dad, do you have bad dreams?" He responded with, "Yes, why?" "Oh, nothing, I was just wondering." He asked with a bit more power in his voice and asked, "Did you have one? Are you feeling okay? Did something happen?" I looked at him in his eyes and said, "Nope, nothing happened." He looked at me and sighed. He started humming. I loved when my father hummed. It wasn't like any other hum. When he hummed, it felt like an earthquake or a shockwave with every other beat. I never knew what song he hummed, and I still don't know. It usually seemed like he hummed just because he could. There was nothing behind it. He just hummed. That's when I saw the thing again. Now, I didn't see the thing, but I saw its eyes. The eyes were bright orange and red that flickered on and off. But you knew it was staring at you. You felt his eyes burn into you until you looked at it, just so it could look right into your soul. I felt that feeling that I was being stared at, and I looked right, and there it was, off the sidelines, just running along with the car from the tree line while staring into my soul. Then it disappeared, as fast as it appeared. A car from the other lane swerved and hit us. I don't remember anything after the car hit us, not a single thing, only faint blurs. A week later is when I did wake back up from my coma after the crash. I was severely injured, but my father basically saved my life, taking most of the hit. But he died. I was left with 2 broken ribs, a concussion, and a leg broken in 4 different places, which left me with a limp. Well guys, I thank you all for listening. I hope these 2 scaries about sleep paralysis makes you think twice before you close your eyes and enter your slumber. I'll see you again very soon. So always remember, the darkness always follows.